Happy Diwali, everyone. I hope everyone's enjoying this first day of the Festival of Lights. I'm Paul Thompson, and this is my Project Hell, where for the next 20 minutes or so, Kelly and I are going to throw out the corporate lingo and just try to talk some no-nonsense project management and give you guys some plain solutions to real project problems.
And I'm Kelly Schockler, and in this episode of My Project Hell, we've got a hot topic teed up for you for your learning enjoyment, something to spur you on in your project management knowledge and growth. And then today, instead of our usual Coach's Corner, we've got another edition of Love It or Lose It, where our producer, Katie Thompson's going to test our ability to give our biased opinions on project management related topics. And then Paul and I will see how we line up with one another. So for those
of
you,
my favorite episodes.
Yeah, I like it too. And just want to invite our audience today, those who made it here today live with us, please use the chat to offer up your own 2 cents on any of the topics that we talk about. We really enjoy hearing from you and your comments. So with that, I'm going to turn it on over to Paul and have him introduce our hot topic.
Great, thank you, Kelly. So let me be forthright here. You know, getting ready for this segment, I really poured through a lot of YouTube videos, scoured a number of websites, kind of my go-to stuff, all in attempts to kind of get a well-rounded view of vendor management. And I got to tell you, there's a lot of crap out there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of advice takes a very us against them perspective and throws around concepts such as strategic view of procurement, vendor business plan, core competencies. One even blamed all of their vendor problems on a lack of sponsored cost reduction initiatives.
Oh, yeah. We're not talking about that, are we?
Right.
Okay.
Because really what I've found the best way to deal with vendors, and really with anyone on the team for that matter, is to have a healthy, honest relationship and work collaboratively. As a vendor myself, oftentimes, I have a contract with my client, and I'll tell you, the moment that either I or my contract or my client has to go to the contract and reference something, I've lost, right? Because the relationship is no longer supporting working together, working collaboratively to solve the problems that come up. And there's going to be problems that come up between clients and vendors. It's just the nature of project work, right? We're all attempting to do something that's never been done before, typically. So even when you're dealing with short-term stuff, work with your vendors and think of them as long-term relationships that you want to foster, that you want to be able to talk to. And it's a small world, right? We've talked about that before too, Kelly, right? So I guarantee you, how you work with your vendors, just like everything else in our industry, what goes around comes around.
Yeah, so let's take this a step further. Our vendors are our stakeholders. And yes, that relationship is something we've got to foster and nurture. And also thinking of it, our vendors as our customers. Even when we're on the customer side of the equation, your vendors are still your personal customers, right? And so many of our listeners today, that part of my stakeholder management philosophy and Paul's stakeholder management philosophy is to treat all of your stakeholders as an important customer. And this stakeholder relationship, you should treat it as seriously as you treat your relationship with your project sponsor. Mm-hmm. So Paul and I like to preach. This means, here we go, I'm going to get on my soapbox. Setting expectations, set them with your vendors, just like you do with your project teams and your sponsors. And so there's just about 3 things I want to mention on this, and Paul, get your insights too. So first thing, be familiar with the SOW, the statement of work. Mm-hmm. What are they responsible for? What are they not responsible for? what might be missing in the SOW, because a lot of times those statements of work, they're really high level and there's not a lot of information, and some things might be missing. So what's missing that you can agree on with your vendor outside of that SOW? Are there service level agreements that you need to be aware of? Are there key performance indicators that you need to be tracking? I mean, know what's expected of you and what is your vendor responsible for delivering and how they're going to deliver it.
Yep.
The second thing, do a formal onboarding session with them. Help bring them up to speed on how it's going to be best to work with you and your organization, and more importantly, with your teams. You're likely to have time zone differences, process protocols, and maybe you're integrating them into your project team so they're part of your meetings. You got to know what your roles and responsibilities are, right? So line that out, work collaboratively with them in team meetings, share information. It's that transparency thing that we talk about with stakeholders. And also, they need to know what your priorities are. So they don't know that unless you share it with them, right? And then the last thing is, I suggest to just kind of support all this is use a vendor relationship agreement, similar to the team norms agreement that we've talked about, or a sponsor agreement that you've got with your sponsor. It's outlining, hey, this is how we're going to work together so that we're on the same page. Nobody's assuming anything. And then you're outlining those norms. So I think that really takes a lot of that pain and misery and surprise out of the relationship going forward.
Yeah, definitely right. And I see communicate, right? Because that's really what it's about. Oftentimes we're running big projects and vendors are playing a big piece of it. And we'll run them through the same kind of training that we've run the rest of the team through, because they're expected to be delivering pieces into the product, into the service that we're providing or that we're managing. The other piece I want to talk a little bit about is, so oftentimes I really enjoy working with vendors, and I will say that, before the sale you get a lot of love, right? You get a lot of pre-sale, and maybe not so much on the back end. So you need to watch that. But that's also kind of up to your method, your negotiation style, your company's philosophy, right? Every company out there, whether it's me, it's the client, or whoever's providing any product or service, is out to try to make a fair profit for a fair service. And if you take that away, it can cause dire consequences. For one example, I was working with a client who really felt like they always had to have the upper hand, negotiate down to the absolute last penny, right? It is squeezing blood out of a turnip and then cranking it down harder. And it really made my life as the project manager extremely difficult, because most of the times I work with a vendor and we're dealing with technology, so they have the experts, right? We often will be able to call on the vendor and go, hey, we love your hardware, but we're having some trouble. The network engineers, whatever, need a little engineering help. Can you send over your pre-sales engineer just to kind of walk them through the process, right? Those types of things that you kind of count on your vendor to be able to do. Well, because they had squeezed them down to absolutely zero, the vendor just kept coming back and saying, Paul, I love you guys, but I got nothing. You're going to have to engage our service side. You're going to have to go through and bring them on at $300 an hour, because I have no budget left whatsoever to give you a pre-sales engineer. So just be thinking about that, because yeah, it might feel good if you think you kind of won or you got something over, but really it comes back to being collaborative, right? And being open and honest with your vendors and with your team. So I encourage you to kind of think of the long-term philosophy you want to take as a project manager working with your vendors.
Yeah, I don't think it's always about winning, right?
Right. It's not.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the thing that we really want you to take away today is just remember your vendors are your customers. Nurture that relationship. And if you're in a vendor relationship right now as a project manager that's a little wonky, maybe it's a little tense, take it back, step back, and just maybe reset and get some norms and operating agreement together and clear the air. I think that would be our
Mhm.
advice.
Yeah.
So, all right. Oh, do you have a few more things you want to share?
One last thing, because someone brought up a really good point, avoiding change orders.
Mm-hmm.
Because absolutely, the time to ask questions, talk, be open is before you sign the contract, right? So set the tone there, and absolutely, don't think, well, I got a great price and then you get change ordered to death. That definitely happens, and it's not something I'm a big fan of. So make sure that everybody understands what the service will cost up front and what the whole service will cost. And also then you kind of can watch your vendors and tell them, yeah, that is part of it. That's part of what we paid for. Sorry, not, but that
No,
was a
that
great comment.
I'm glad. Those are great comments from our audience today. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, well, let's move into Love It or Lose It. That's where you
Nice.
come in, Katie. There you are. So, Love It or Lose It. Katie's got a little basket full of topics, we'll call them. I don't know if they're controversial or not. They might be. And she's going to put one down for us to take up, and Paul and I will take turns giving us our biased opinion. Let's be clear, this is not unbiased. Paul and I will definitely have an opinion, and sometimes it might be very different, knowing us.
All right. So the first one, team incentives or rewards, love it or lose it.
I think I'm up, right?
Yeah.
Team incentives, rewards. Well, I'm a big believer in kind of that in the moment reward. When you see somebody on your team going above and beyond, being able to throw in a gift card to Starbucks, these days Amazon, something like that. Just a small, just kind of a thank you. I noticed you. Keep up the good work. So big love it fan there.
Yeah, it's a heck yeah for me too. I mean, who doesn't like rewards? Really? But they have to be meaningful. So you can throw a $25 Starbucks card to anyone, but what are you saying when you do that, right? What if it was a little bit more meaningful? So, and I actually think as PMs, we need to build this into our budget and find unique ways to reward our team. Maybe Hakeem spent 3 days in a row knocking out, some extra requirements for an upcoming sprint, and then what are you going to give him? Well, you got to recognize him for that in a way that's meaningful for him. So maybe he loves food and there's a nice restaurant. Maybe he's a big fan of a sports team and he would appreciate some team gear. I don't know. Maybe he's an avid gardener and he wants some credit for some plants at a local nursery. I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? Make it relevant and then be consistent, because I don't know, Paul, I've been in situations where it was sporadic rewards, right? And so then it looks like you're playing favorites. So I think you got to establish like what deserves a reward, and then make sure that you're observant and rewarding those who meet that criteria consistently.
Okay, so you're a love it.
I love it.
Okay.
All that to say, I love it.
All right. Eliminating the PM role, love it or lose it.
Okay, sorry, like eliminating the PM role. So I'm thinking lose it. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool PM. I mean, I'm thinking disciplined, agile, Scrum, extreme programming, right? Love to tout the idea. There's no project manager role, but really, did the PM role disappear somewhere? I don't think so. Someone's still managing the schedule, the budget, the scope, running interface with stakeholders. So maybe it's not that the role's been eliminated. It's just been parsed out to the team lead or the scrum master or the product owner. I don't know. I don't like the idea of eliminating PM role. It's kind of like a shell game, I think, you know, hey, we don't have a PM, but all they've done is split it out amongst a few people. And then there's like this schizophrenia going on about how things are managed. So I don't know. Always seems like there's a need for a PM. Paul?
Well, I think you're right when it comes to somebody's going to manage the schedule, the backlog, the matrix, the sprints, whatever you want to call it. There is a task list that needs to be managed. There's a budget that somebody has to watch, right? Otherwise, we're back to the point at which, in the old days, they'd overspend and underdeliver. And certainly, scope creep is a real thing, even when there are PMs managing it. So leave it to the engineers, to the team, and they're just gonna, sure, I'm happy to add that to the list, right? So absolutely, there's a PM role. What you call it, I get it. Every newfangled, hot off the press framework wants to have a new name for everything, so it sounds fresh, but it's still a project manager. And there's a reason that operational managers or staff managers don't do this, because they have other jobs. This requires a real full-time person more often than not on big projects to deal with. So lose it. I don't care what you call it, but the project manager's there.
Okay, so we've been in agreement on 3 things. Katie, can you change that?
Well,
maybe?
Yeah, I know this next one is going to, although I don't think it would spark debate, it will. Prioritizing a work-life balance. Love it or lose it.
Prioritizing a work-life balance.
So I believe you can have it all, just not all at the same time. You're gonna make choices. There's so many hours in a day. There are times at which you're gonna end up with a lot of family time, either because of circumstances or whatever. There's other times when you're gonna choose to put your income source first, right? Because that lends to your family time later. I just have a hard time believing you can have it all at once at the same time. So I'm kind of a lose it. You gotta make choices. They can shift, they can be all back and forth, but you're never gonna have it all at once.
Oh, good, we disagree. You can love it or lose it, but if you want to have a life, you have to prioritize. Who wants to work all day and night, even if you need money? I hear what you're saying, Paul, but if you don't put up boundaries around work, then it's seeping into every aspect of your life, and you don't get that family time that I think Laura or Matt just mentioned. And then if you aren't exactly in love with what you do, then you're really creating all this resentment and angst about your job. And well, I think as I've gotten older, I've becoming more adamant about the idea of not caring too much about my job. And what I mean about that is caring so much that you burn yourself out, because that is first and foremost in every aspect of your life. So, I mean, for instance, last night, I'm doing a contract work right now, and I had to finish up a presentation for a project I'm working on because I didn't get it done during the day. And I was okay with it because I was loving what I was creating. I was creating some visuals for a presentation, and I love doing that. It made me happy, right? So I was flexible about what I was doing, but I think it's a balanced approach is what we need, right? If I'm putting in too many hours with my work, then my personal life and my health are going to suffer. And I'm not going to be bringing my best self to work anyway, if I'm doing that.
True. Well, that's actually all we have time for today. So.
Okay. Thanks, Katie. All right. So yeah, we're at time. So something we want you to do we want you to follow us on our YouTube channel for My Project Hell. And you can catch all of our replays on that YouTube channel. We've got a link on our myprojecthell.com website and in the post-show email that you're going to get if you registered and are attending today. If you want to spend even more time with Paul or myself, we also offer 30-minute consults for free. So those links are also in the post-show email.
And I hope you guys enjoyed the show as much as we did. I know Kelly and I have a lot of fun putting this on. Please join us next time when we really haven't covered out what our hot topic is going to be yet. So that'll be
That's true.
That'll be a surprise to you guys and us. And if you would like to participate in Coach's Corner, please drop us a note, register, drop us an email over at myprojecthell@gmail.com. We're always on the lookout for project managers who want to kind of up their game as well as look for some advice to solve one of their burning problems. So in the post show email, you guys are going to get a little survey. Please, we love lessons learned and we need them. So fill it out, send it back. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. See you next time.